Hello and welcome to Thought Provoking Tech. I'm Zach, and in today's episode of Cloud Gaming Head2Head, I'm going to be using 3D Mark Firestrike to pit Paperspace plus Parsec against Liquidsky and see who comes out on top. So let's go ahead and head over to the main desktop real quick to do some preliminary information on the machines that we'll be running on, and then we'll go from there. Alright, so over in the top right of the screen, you'll see a graphic detailing the machines we're going to be testing today. There's going to be two from Liquidsky and two from Paperspace. These are the only two tiers that Liquidsky currently does offer, but Paperspace did have a tier above the P5000, which is the P6000 NVIDIA Quadro tier. The only difference really with that tier is that it did have the P6000, which includes 32 gigabytes of VRAM. But since these are in cards in completely different generations, I didn't really want to include the P6000 because kind of from what I was looking at, your big gains are going to be in your increased VRAM, and from the gaming perspective, and due to the judging by the increased cost, it didn't look like it was really going to be worth it. So I'm just going to try to test the P5000 and the GPU Plus plan from Paperspace. Alright, so starting off with the Liquidsky Gamer tier, you can see that we got a pretty decent overall score with 6,991. The graphics scores, we got 53 and 43 for the two tests that runs on graphics. On physics side, we kind of go downhill quite steep. The physics test is a pretty intense test, but we only got 11.51 FPS when it was running the physics test. I'm betting that is because this package it is pretty restricted on the CPU side. When we test the Pro here in a little bit, the Pro package from Liquidsky, that will be a pretty good indicator because it does run on the exact same GPU architecture. It just has double the VRAM and double the number of virtual cores on the processor side. So if we do see a big jump in our physics test, that will likely will likely indicate that this is held back due to just having 3 virtual cores for the machine overall. And finally, to sum things up, we got a 13.6 overall combined score. So let's go ahead and move on to the Liquidsky Pro tier. All right, so moving over to the Liquidsky Pro tier plan, we had a really good jump to 8,442. On our overall scores. Our FPS benchmarks on the graphics side were pretty much identical within a margin of error, but our physics test did have pretty much a double in our result, and that is probably likely due to having double the number of virtual cores for our CPU. So that might indicate that the number of cores on the gamer plan are going to hold us back a little in physics heavy games. But that is not necessarily 100% true because this is just a synthetic benchmark. But with that, we kind of have a little bit of insight into how the different tiers are going to kind of increase our performance. It doesn't look like the increase of the VRAM really helped it much, but these cards are using the exact same architecture. One just has more VRAM. So unless the game actually needs more than that 2 gigabytes of VRAM, we're probably not going to see much improvement on the Pro tier on the purely FPS side. So if a game isn't CPU intensive and isn't VRAM intensive, the gamer plan looks like it might be able to perform neck to neck with the Pro tier. So let's go ahead and move over to the Paperspace side. All right, so moving over to the Paperspace GPU Plus tier, we ended up with a score of 6,412. Which is a little bit lower than the Liquidsky Gamer plan, but not a huge jump lower. But down here in the actual FPS results from these tests, that's where it gets a little more interesting. We see here that the graphics tests are considerably lower when you're considering just the graphics side of the test, anywhere from 14 to 18 FPS if my quick math is correct. But our physics test is pretty much identical to what our the Pro tier on Liquidsky did receive. And overall, the combined score of 13.8 FPS is pretty identical to what the Liquidsky Gamer plan did receive. So the increased physics score but the lower GPU score kind of balanced out to end up with a combined score pretty close to what the gamer plan did receive. Now, once again, in games that are more graphically intensive compared to their CPU intensive levels, it does look like the GPU Plus plan is going to perform considerably less than what we would get in the Liquidsky machine. So let's go ahead and move over to the P5000 machine to kind of see how that kind of stacked up against things. All right, so moving over to the Paperspace P5000 tier, we see a massive increase over all the other machines that I've tested thus far, especially over its little brother, the GPU Plus plan, getting a score of 14,213, which is a massive jump over everybody else. We definitely see this in the graphics scores. With 96 FPS on the first test and 79 FPS on the second test. Very, very good scores that are very respectable scores. Over on the physics side, we also see the highest physics score by a decent margin that we've seen tonight at 34 FPS. And once again, going past all the other results so far tonight, on the combined score, we got 24 FPS in that test. So in every single test, it kind of blew past every other result we got tonight. When I do my video on the pricing, though, I'm going to be very interested to see if the P5000 tier is way up there in respect to what the other tiers are getting. I know it's pretty much double what you would pay for the GPU Plus plan, if I'm remembering correctly, on an hourly basis. So at least in regards to its little brother, it is a big jump on the price side. But I don't know how it kind of lines up with Liquidsky on the pricing there, because they do things a little bit differently on the billing side on over at Liquidsky. So I'm going to be doing a big breakdown on the pricing in a future video, and I'm going to be very interested to see how this stacks up on the price side, because definitely in the performance side in this synthetic test, it is blowing past everybody else. Just once again, this is a synthetic test, so it might not indicate that it's going to be blowing past everybody else in real world games, but it is very promising for what we might have in store for super high-end games that you want to play at 1080p with all the settings turned cranked up all the way. This might be the package for us, so I'm definitely interested to see what our future benchmarks have here. All right, so I've pretty much covered all 4 tiers, but I am going to kind of break this down in the graph here in a second. So let's go ahead and jump to that. All right, so I've made this little graphic here to kind of wrap up the results from today's test. If you can't read this, the blue bar is the Liquidsky Gamer tier, the orange bar is the Liquidsky Pro tier, the gray bar is the Paperspace GPU Plus plan, and the yellow bar is the Paperspace P5000 tier. The first set of data here is your graphics test 1, second set of data is graphics test 2, third set of data is physics, and this fourth and final set of data is the combined physics plus graphics test that the 3D Mark software did. All the data in in this chart is all of the FPS scores that these machines received in their test. So just a couple little remarks now that I kind of have this in a visual format. You can see that on the graphics side, the Liquidsky machines do perform quite identical to each other within margin of error, pretty close to identical performance. You see, now we can clearly see the huge margin between the GPU Plus plan from Paperspace and the P5000 plan from Paperspace. It does come at quite a bit of a cost premium in relation to the GPU Plus plan, but I am wondering if we'll continue to see this big margin with the P5000 versus the Liquidsky machines and the GPU Plus plan when we actually get the real world test with games versus a synthetic benchmark from 3D Mark, but it's pretty interesting. Over on the physics side, we can see that the Liquidsky Gamer plan kind of struggles a little bit, kind of falling behind on the pack, and the P5000 plan kind of continuing its trend is kind of beating everybody pretty handily. And finally, over in the combined FPS, we see that all 3 machines, both Liquidsky machines and the GPU Plus plan from Paperspace, all are pretty much pretty close to each other and competing with the Pro plan from Liquidsky pulling ahead a little bit. But the P5000 plan has a considerable margin over all 3 machines in the combined test. Now, whether this P5000 plan continues to retain that margin is going to be seen in the future videos. So I'm very excited to get to those and see if this how these machines continue to stack up against each other. One final thing is how these also stack up against each other in the hourly cost to run them. So that's going to be another kind of interesting tidbit that we'll be able to research a little bit here in the future. All right, so that's pretty much it for today's video. I have a lot of editing ahead of me to get this done. I hope this video didn't end up to be too crazy long. I'm going to try to trim it as best as I can, but hopefully it doesn't end up with too crazy length. I did do a lot of testing here, some pretty interesting results. I'm looking forward to see how these machines continue to stack up against each other as I start to do tests. If you are looking forward to a test from a certain game, shoot me that in the comments below, and I'll make sure that I try to add it to my list. And I'll kind of gauge the games I already have kind of at the top of the list, and if there's a lot of requests for a certain game, I might consider purchasing it if I have any interest in kind of playing it possibly in my spare time. So if you did like this video, guys, and if you found it helpful, give it a big like. I greatly appreciate that. And if you're not an existing subscriber, hit that subscribe button to stay tuned for more great videos from Thought-Provoking Tech. And one final thing is check out the links in the description below, or also on the banner that kind of rotates throughout the video. So that's pretty much it for today's video. I'm looking forward to the continuation of this Cloud Gaming head-to-head series. But for today, that's it. And until next time, Zach out.